This week we are giving away a copy of the Star Wars Legion box set from store.ontabletop.com. If you want to be in with a chance to win the best Star Wars core set, the original trilogy, then all you need to do is comment below, give us a like, be a subscriber to the channel, and if you can, share the video about on social media. In the meantime, sit back and relax because we're going to get stuck into a week's worth of gaming and hobby. The weekend starts here. Okay then, folks, it's great to have you all back here again, and that's a terrific prize that can be won if anybody's interested in getting stuck into the Star Wars Legion. I've been thinking about it an awful lot recently, mostly because somebody's put a clip up of the end of The Mandalorian. Spoilers, by the way. with the Force theme tune that Williams did for the original Star Wars playing over Luke's obliteration of all the droids. So yeah, it seems somewhat fitting that we give people a chance to recreate that.
Very cool.
To tabletop. But moving away from Star Wars and into the most important part of the week.
Yes.
You've been allowed to pick something this week, Ben, not me.
I have, yes.
What have you picked for us?
I scoured back through the list of companies that we've looked at and was like, hold on a second, why has this not been picked? And then I realized it's probably because it's got dwarves in it. And so someone was like, let's just remove this from the running order. But yes.
Push that down the list.
But we're going to be having a look at Avatars of War, who have been working in the wargaming sector for a very, very long time now.
Yeah, Felix used to be a sculptor for GW. So way back in the day, I bought quite a lot of his stuff, and then he went back home and launched his own site. So, Avatars of War, it's a delightful place to visit, isn't it?
It really is. A lot of people will know them probably from many moons ago when they were doing a set of plastic dwarf slayers, I think it was back then, that everyone was like, I must have those. This was back when Games Workshop was doing all the metal ones, and everyone was like, when are we going to get plastic slayers? And they never came around. Yeah. Go on, click on it. Oh,
yes. I also like their dark elves.
Their dark elves are also very nice. But yeah, so of course dwarves are going to go first. But as I was saying, there you see. So there are the Dwarf Seekers, or the Doom Seeker regiment that they did. Really, really good. I had a set of those plastic models, painted them up. They were really nice. The only problem was I remember sticking on some of their hands back to front because they do like swearing things. And I was like, oh, his finger's in the wrong place, but never mind. That was easily rectified with a knife. But no, really awesome models they did for these. And then they went off and did some ranges and that kind of thing, which I don't think are available anymore.
No, none of they did an extensive range of stuff, which we won't go into because you can't buy it anymore, but they were spun plastic, so PVC, back when people were doing PVC, so they did rangers and hammers and some Chaos Warrior-esque figures as well.
See, I remember building this particular unit one time, and that banner in the plastic set, oh my god, trying to get it to stand up.
I know. I didn't even put that in. I realized that a dwarf slayer with a standard probably didn't make much sense. So I basically just like put an orc head into his hand and that was the guy who was the standard, because he was like, look at the thing I just killed. So
makes a lot more sense, I think. But I'm just going to open a few of these up.
Quite the impressive mohawk.
It really is, yeah. That's the Slayer style. I'm trying to get to that stage myself, you see. I've shaved the sides. I just want to grow it up into a proper mohawk. But
you see, my hairline just went, no, you're never having one of those. I'm going to veto that right now.
You can go the Snorri Nosebite route and hammer nails into your head. That would be the best.
I will look like Jim Carrey in a series of unfortunate events.
What I will say is all of those mohawks are separate. There's a little dimple in the top of the head to line them up. But if you just fill that in with a bit of putty, you can just have a rake of bald slayers coming at you like Cleopatra.
But the range as a whole, like just looking at some of the miniatures, a lot of them were in metal. Some of them are now available in resin as well. So they're doing an interesting mix. All of them are 28mm scale, and you could sort of err on the caution of 32 as well for a lot of these because they're heroic
chunky,
proportion.
chunky fellas.
So they're perfect for a lot of the fantasy games that have existed out there. So, for example, if you're an old Warhammer Fantasy Battles fan, then these were obviously perfect for dropping into it. One of the ones that one of the ranges or the games that they very much focus on as part of this collection is the Ninth Age, which is the fan-made, the fan-made rules that took on from 8th edition after that went the way of the Dodo. And so if you want to dive in and play a proper mass battle fantasy game in the style of Warhammer Fantasy, but with lots of tweaks and community input and that kind of thing, then you can try that, and it's good fun. We've actually got some videos on it, I think, on the channel, which is cool. So
we do, yeah. It's I suppose the best way to think about it is the inheritor of Warhammer Fantasy. It was more or less taken on by the guys who used to be part of the grand tournament scene. So a lot of the sort of big gamers.
Yeah, the ones that just went, no, you're not blowing up our world. We like our world. We'd like to keep our world.
But
there's quite a big range, isn't there?
There really is.
So much of everything. I mean, we've only looked at the dwarves.
Well, I did think everything. You need to look now. So one of the other games that they do the miniatures for is this one, which is Arena Deathmatch. So instead of it being a mass battle style game, you instead play as individual characters or a warband of characters, and you fight it out in an arena, which is pretty awesome. And I believe they've even, because they've got the physical version, which you can see here, but they also do a digital version, which is available on like Tabletop Simulator and that kind of thing. So if you're interested in giving it a go before you buy the actual physical versions of the miniatures and stuff, you can go and do that now, which is pretty awesome.
Cool.
But back to the miniatures.
Yes, let's.
Someone pick a category. I've picked dwarves, but you guys can all choose one for yourselves.
Please, Dark Elves.
Yeah,
Dark Elves
is a good call.
Dark Elves.
It's not a bad call. I have a few of these.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty.
They are very pretty.
Done very much in the style of either Dark Elf Corsair style figures, so you're kind of like Black Ark Corsairs and stuff, or the slightly more bloodthirsty K-Knights and that kind of thing that they usually see in their range. That guy in particular was absolutely fantastic. I remember playing against a whole bunch of Dark Elf armies that had him at the helm, which was really cool. So,
I do like the dragon skin cloak. It's very detail.
Yeah, it's very nice.
And I love the fact that they've linked to their Instagram as well, so that anyone who's painted them can sort of link in.
Yeah.
Is that
you can get inspiration.
I have absolutely no idea.
What are Instagram?
Someone tried to tell me about Twitter the other day. It didn't work.
What is Tinterwebs, Jerry?
Yeah, that type of thing.
You are the tech guy, though, aren't you?
I am the tech guy.
Yeah.
Very true. They are gorgeous.
Doesn't work.
Figures.
Hit it with a rock.
And the fact that the figures themselves generally come with some form of alternate part. Sometimes it's not much. It may just be like a helmet or head swap or an alternate weapon. There's somebody's done the whole crew.
Nice.
Very nice.
But being able to get things like, unique or alternate Dark Elf sorcerers is always good family fun, because they do an unusual set of miniatures, I would say, in that they are so characterful, because they generally aim at them as being part of the arena. So everybody's a character. That means you can find great army generals or sorcerers, or if you're going to play tabletop games, it's one way of doing it. But also, if you're planning on using them incorrectly for RPGs, you've got I mean, I'm fairly certain this Naga also predates Games Workshop going for the Naga look for the Dark Elves.
I think it does,
by quite a considerable amount of time as well.
Wow.
See, it's one thing I love about companies like this is, all right, one thing I hate is like just machining out the exact same miniature over and over. And with these, you get so much variation in your different kits.
Yeah.
You feel like each model you're painting is a new project.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that when we were looking at the dwarves, not one dwarf was the same. They all had some form of different armor. They had some different kind of mohawk. Every single miniature is different, and he's brilliant.
Yeah, I find that more engaging whenever I'm painting a big unit.
Yeah.
It's very much one of the things that they kind of, it's very much one of the things that they kind of aim for with this is, I guess you'd say similar to what War Games Atlantic have done with their kind of plastic range. This was kind of using their characters to fill gaps within ranges a lot of the time. So it was like, oh, there's not enough rune priests, or there's not enough, dark elf sorceresses, as we were saying. Let's, make some of those and throw them into the mix.
And this is something they've started doing end of last year, I think, or middle of last year, was actually doing STL files as well, both for, I suppose, what you would call standard miniatures, but also terrain pieces. There's a few dwarf sort of large terrain pieces, which you can just get as STL files to add to your battlefield.
The cool thing about these ones as well is that you can choose the options you want. So you choose their body, then you choose the head, then the hair and the weapons and everything, and then they'll send you that version. You get the STL file obviously to print
again.
Yourself,
that makes me even more happy for like individualization within units.
Yeah. Very good for those people, as you say, Jerry, who are correctly using them for role-playing games.
I'm sure Jerry's looking at the 3D render going, there's something not quite right here. That base, why is it round?
I imagine that's just to help it rotate.
So, Free, do you want to choose a category?
Oh, I feel like, okay, just to add a bit of variation here, because we have gone into, I know it is still fantasy, but fantasy football, I just want to see how different it is compared to
I think
other bits.
They've got like one or two models. Two models, there you go. So
still interesting.
Yeah.
And I had to pick the one that only had 2 in it, didn't I?
But the cool thing about this one is that they took, there's like it's a alternative sculpt almost of their Slayer that they did previously, but with the ball and everything, which looks fantastic.
I do love that his number is hanging off his ponytail.
That's awesome.
That's a nice touch.
That is cool. Well, then otherwise, the undead for me then.
Undead.
Have a look at the undead.
Fundead.
The undead,
I believe they actually got some new stuff quite recently, the undead as well.
Yeah, this week, in fact, they've just started showing off some new undead stuff.
Yeah.
So
they did previous to what was available this week. It's right in the middle, Jerry. Right in the middle.
There you go.
They had all the metal and resin stuff, so they did vampires and necromancers and that kind of thing. And then the newer ones are the ones you can see in the resin now, which are the White Lords, the Wraiths, and the Skeleton Warriors, which came out as well.
They are very cool.
Since everyone's getting very undead at the moment, it probably is a good time to make undead miniatures. So yeah.
The classic necromancer.
Yeah.
Tell his necromancer he's got a scythe.
Yeah.
And a friend with a shovel somewhere off camera. Apprentice's first job.
Was it the shovel? Was it the mantic necromancer who was like stroking the head of his buddy as he came out of the ground?
No, he's like a puppet. He's got one hand as if he's pulling it up with invisible puppety strings.
See, I always thought he was like stroking his head and be like, "Come on."
He could do that as well.
I mean,
Jurassic Park with the raptor. Come on, little one. Come on.
But there's an impressive one there. He's got his dead friends holding his book up for him.
Oh, teamwork makes a dream work, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But no, very much got like I liked that one in particular because it had that slightly Nagash vibe, sort of back when he was a mortal rather than
I had that Nagash vibe when you couldn't buy Nagash.
Well, yeah.
Like you say, being able to grab things that fit into an army that didn't have specific miniatures at that stage was always handy.
Yeah.
But there you can see a couple of options with sword and with helmet.
Brilliant.
And bald head.
So you could make Manfred or Vlad.
Options.
Yeah. Trademark.
Yeah. My friends once actually tried to get me to make like an 8th edition army, and they just wanted me to do the von Karstein family mafia.
I honestly think the von Karsteins are some of the coolest characters in Warhammer Fantasy. So yeah.
This looks like something I've taken a picture of. I'm going to take a grip shot, but not quite get them all in. And rather than move back and take another picture, I'm just going to take the same picture, but slightly from the other side. And this way, you can see it all.
Now, obviously,
they are gorgeous.
Lloyd is going to adore stitching that one back together.
But Lloyd will probably take the shields off. But apart from that, I think these are really great. They look like a rock band to me.
They
it's
do.
The hair flowing as well. This guy in particular.
He does look like he should belong on a bottle of Trooper, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah.
But definitely something that
don't see many of those these days.
the thing that I'd use these for is maybe as unit champions rather than like buying lots and lots of them, if you know what I mean. I think I'd maybe use them as the command element of a force or as the leaders of units and that kind of thing.
It's
or in dungeons as characterful skeleton warriors.
I was going to say for small skirmish games like dungeon crawlers or that sort of thing where you're only having a handful on the tabletop, having the individuality is particularly good. I like the two wraiths and white they've done because they're both floating by the medium of a movement tray.
I also like that wraith in Spanish is especto.
Especto.
Fancy.
It's nice to be coming here. I mean, I suppose that has to be done as a resin cast to get all those thin pieces with all the holes through it.
It's something we're seeing a lot more with this style of miniature is the sculptors are starting to use a lot more negative space.
Yeah.
Which I find really cool.
Yeah. It's always nice because when you look at some of the older miniatures that are out there, obviously very nice, but you can tell that they're just big blocks within the thing, whereas this gives it a little bit more of a, I say, realistic look on the tabletop. But it certainly works.
We'll say Felix needs to shake off the skull motif, though. That's a fierce amount of skulls on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And the wraith has the same thing where there's just like what looks to be just a string of skulls from one shoulder to the other.
He's ex-workshop, and skulls on skulls for workshop. It's a thing.
There's a lot of the other range he hasn't skulled up.
Yeah.
Just because it's undead doesn't mean they all have to have it.
Oh, there's some more skulls in the scythe there,
Yeah. But that one's not a million miles away from what you call it. Oh, Darby O'Gill.
What, the Banshee?
Yeah, that's coming howling at children everywhere.
One of Sean Connery's finest moments.
No, my favorite of the newer stuff is the other one that they did for these, mainly because it looks a little bit like Krell. Well, in fact, it is Krell. But if you're a fan of Heinrich Kemmler from Warhammer Fantasy, this is his faithful chaos servant brought back from the dead to kick ass and take names. And look at all those holes in that resin.
Yeah, that's brilliant, though. It's like you said, though, it makes it look different on the tabletop when you've got bits like that. And using the negative space alone, it will add that texture of that there's wind blowing on the tabletop and it doesn't look just so, it looks a bit more gentle, doesn't it?
Again, depending on what you're looking at the miniature, seeing like little flashes of color through the holes and seeing the change in shape can be, I don't know, it's very appealing.
Very.
Jerry,
what are you going to pick, Jerry? Yeah.
Oh, I know what's in the ogres. I'll go for the Kingdom of Aquitaine.
Oh. So if you're looking for someone a slightly more, I guess the way that I'd view him is a bit more Dark Soulsy, I guess.
He does. To be honest, I was noticing that with the undead. They look very, but they could fit into a Bloodborne universe,
Very much so. But it's also nice to see like a gallant knight without a sword and an axe instead. So it's very awesome.
Going full King Richard.
Yeah. But
batter them all down with an axe.
They also do the Kingdom of Men. I think is very much more of like the Empire stuff. Yeah. Empire of Men is a bit more.
We've got some Bretonians in there.
Nice.
There are a few.
I like the Inquisitor.
That were the stallion feel.
Mm-hmm. So if you're making a Dogs of War army, then these are options for you to pick up. So if you're making an army that exists solely from eBay purchases, actually, I suppose. But
it's all right. I've got plenty of Dogs of War, mate.
Of course you do, Jerry.
I have a shocking amount of the things we've been looking at in here as well.
Sometimes I think Jerry's Friday night is just sitting on the internet going, I don't have that. I don't have that. I don't have that. I have that, but I want to have that.
But the most important question is, how much of it do you have painted, Jerry?
We don't ask those kind of questions.
I've got 3 boxes of those. I have 3 boxes of those Dwarf Berserkers, and none of them are off their sprues.
No. Sorry, I don't make you feel I don't mean to make you feel attacked. So.
No, it doesn't. I just.
I really like the warrior priestess from this range. I think she looks awesome. Just bringing the hammer down on someone. Oh, halfling rogue as well.
Oh yeah.
If you're going for a sneaky backstabber.
Nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
They are a delightful set.
They are.
I mean, that's one of the things. Felix doesn't just sculpt himself anymore. I think there's a couple of other sculptors have joined him.
Yeah.
It would be nice if they started doing some more of the regiment sets, but I have a feeling that they weren't working out economically viable, I think was the problem.
I think because it was the hard plastic stuff, it was becoming a bit awkward, yeah.
Yeah, well, the hard plastic was
with
expensive,
Unicast?
and then the PVC stuff was, they had to go through another company, and they were having great difficulty with actual supply with them.
Yeah, honestly, if these guys started looking at maybe doing some Unicast miniatures, might be really great for getting some of those regiment boxes out.
Does seem to be a new technique that has been working well for Archon especially. So
well, it's something I looked at whenever it was first coming out. It worked out like, I don't know, maybe a fifth of the cost of doing like a traditional hard plastic miniature. It was like, I can't remember the exact number, but it was like way cheaper. Oh, Jerry, man after my heart.
Since I mentioned it, I suppose I should at least show it.
Yes.
Ben was like, why didn't we come here first?
If you fancy decorating your tabletop in a Warcraft way,
wow,
just have one of these on top of your massive dwarf fortress.
I want to make the dwarven Argoneths, so have those two standing in front of like a river to Barak Var, like all the sea entrance to Barak Var, with the massive dwarven hole behind it with those there.
Again, the nice thing is, because these are 3D prints, Ben, we can make them as big as you want.
Yeah.
That big dwarves are quite small anyway. Regular human-sized statues, and
they make up for it with their architecture. That's their.
Somebody's
stunning.
Got some.
That's beautifully painted.
Very nicely run out.
The nice thing about it as well is that they've kind of tried to go for, they've got like Grungni and Grimnir, and then the dwarven statue of like the Lord to be like the Lord of the Hold. The only thing they're missing is Valaya, and then you have all of the dwarven pantheon. Man, am I showing my nerd? I don't know.
No, you're not.
It's impressive, Ben.
Someone's used it as a trophy. That's cool.
That's awesome.
No, very cool stuff indeed.
Yeah.
I would also recommend having a look at the Orc collection in particular, because alongside the dwarves, which were kind of like one of the first things they went to,
I am.
Gary, what have you done?
They have a Patreon. I'm just trying to see what's on it. But yeah, I'll go to the Orcs in a minute.
Yeah, but I think this is them looking at sort of giving out the STL files of the stuff that is now on their store, which is pretty cool. Because we're seeing this a lot with different companies, is that they test them out on Patreon, see whether or not people like them, and then if they do well, then they put them into their stores later as well. So
yeah,
that is a brilliant idea.
Also, it means that whenever they bring out something like brand spanking new that people really want to lay their hands on, they have no supply chain. It's just, here you go, it's in your email.
Yeah.
Rock on.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the orcs and goblins, and then I think their barbarians are pretty awesome as well, actually. Maybe I'm just going to click. Well, maybe we'll just stay on here for the entire episode. But no, like I'm a big fan of dwarves, but I also like their ancient enemy, the orcs and the goblins, the greenskins. And I think they've done so many characterful pieces for these. And you know how Warren a couple of weeks ago was talking about savage, brutal orcs? I think they've done that well here.
Very much so.
In that they look that they would just cleave your head off.
Yeah.
So.
Again, it's whenever Workshop changed their fantasy orcs the last time, I kind of fell out with it because the armor and stuff was way too clean.
The Orcs, you mean?
Yeah. The style of them just became way too clean. I always loved sort of the patched together look of the old school orcs.
That looks like they've used candy for that or something. They have Twizzlers or something.
Wow, that's what it would look like if I glued it together. Huh? Not going to happen.
This is how Jerry counts things as being painted when he sees other people doing it.
Yeah. I've lived vicariously through it.
Well, you're technically painting vicariously.
But no, really awesome stuff, especially if you're trying to make like a very varied force, because a lot of the time you'll see that it'll be orc war bosses and then orcs and goblins underneath them. But I like that they actually went into the depth of doing more shamans and war chiefs for the goblins as well, so that you could do a little bit more of like a stunty force out there to hunt down Dowie in the tunnels. And stuff.
He's particularly nice because he's just taking the mech out of the dwarf. Remember the dwarf lord on a shield with a shield?
King Ulrich, I think his name was.
Whereas he's got a very, it's a going to say it's a rune shield. Hang on, lift it down from the shelf. Yeah, it's a dwarven rune shield, and it's all even though he's covering most of it because he's bouncing on the top. All of the shield is all sculpted on there. If really you don't want to have him on the top, he could be elsewhere. I didn't bother with the ale mug for mine because that's actually an optional piece.
Oh, cool. What's the other thing he has then? Is it just his open hand?
Open hand, yeah.
Okay.
It was just a little. If you want to put a pint in his hand, you can, just to show people that he's been stealing all around him.
Absolutely, he is going to spill it though if he's not careful.
Dwarf King Skrig Dwarf Mocker.
Yep.
What a name.
Grottling Shield Bearer. Yep.
Yeah, honestly, these would make a fantastic warband for something like Frostgrave.
I think that would be really cool as like an alternative, because while Frostgrave is mainly humans, there's nothing to say you can't have like,
well, if you're doing like a warlord version, just fine, run it with the same stat lines, but you can just run these guys and just have
no reason not to. There's nothing inherent in Frostgrave that means they have to be human.
Yeah. Well, the first game I ever played was actually a dwarf wizard band.
He's quite nice, I will say. He's very top heavy.
Fighty.
It's really nice to see them looking a bit more menacing than more whimsical, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because that's what puts me off of orcs. I love orcs and goblins anyway, but quite a lot you do find are very whimsical, and I just want them to look like outright savages.
Yeah.
And this does this exactly.
Well, have you starting a dwarf an orc war band at any point now? Free. So.
Oh no, that's it. The hoarding will continue.
I love how I immediately just said, "Well, have you starting a dwarf war band?" without even checking myself.
It's subliminal. That's what it is.
Yeah. He's kind of doing the Darren Brown. He'll say dwarf war band, and it's just like, but I want an orc war band, but dwarf war band. Order it, and it's just like, why did I order a dwarf war band? What's going on here?
Well, what's going on here is they've sculpted the crown of command on that goblin because that makes sense because nobody ever took a goblin army that didn't have the crown of command.
It has the shiny hat, you obey.
Unmodified leadership. Yes, please.
Oh, I like
that.
That's cool.
It's winning friends and influencing people.
Make sure that you put many, many pennies under that base.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or
the heaviest penny you can
square
find.
Of lead.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of the old Goblin Fanatics.
It does, yeah.
I have a sneaking suspicion he may have sculpted those.
Yeah.
It would make sense because they've got that kind of style to them. The sort of like slightly more loony, twisted style that you get with a lot of these goblins.
Counterbalanced beautifully.
Yeah.
I was about to ask, but you preempted my question in saying, how would you not get that to fall over? But you've already said it, Penny.
So, yeah. They lean backwards off the base to account for the fact that they're flying off the front of it with something else equally.
I have made many standard bearers for units that will always fall over until you put a penny in the base. So
it was a good tip. Thank you.
if you're ever passing a building site free and you see there's a little bit of scrap lead sitting, just grab it.
No, start collecting it.
This was one of their kits that's a little bit more. There's a few more options in it, so you could tweak around the different weapon sets and that kind of thing, which is really cool.
That's cool.
I wasn't as overly enamored by the axe in this for this guy, but I liked the choppers. I thought they were really cool. So,
I like them with the weapon and shield. Bendy.
Don't mind bendy. It just looks strange.
But no,
an S bend like a scythe would have made sense in there.
I suppose, yeah.
It's metal, you can always twist it back.
And a very, very cool
section of CO cast plastic these days.
Well, there you go. Wow.
Nice.
They step things up. But yeah, an absolutely fantastic range. And this is like kind of just scratching the surface of kind of what they do. Like obviously there's all the vermin stuff, so there's loads of like Skaven-y style creatures in there. They've done beasts. So actually we should probably have a look at the beasts because I think they're really cool for the or the beasts of the arena, I was going to suggest. Because I think they've done some like big monsters. It's just above the 3D printable scenery one. Because they've done some like creatures that you would fight in the arena, which is really cool. And the thing that really got me with these is that I think these would be fantastic if you were diving into something like Warcry. You know how they've got lots of creatures that will sort of invade the tabletop when you're playing games. Use these for that. Or if you're doing a slightly more like Warhammer themed Frostgrave, perhaps, maybe throw these into some of the wandering monsters that are stalking throughout the city and stuff. So, yeah. But no, really cool stuff.
Nice. Very nice. Oop,
They are
someone
delightful.
failed their demonic ascension.
Yes. Yeah. Asked for too many boons from Slanesh. That was the.
Oh no, it's a pestilency one.
Oh, yeah.
So Papa Nurgle went, I love you so much, but I'm going to make you blob.
And that would be perfect
you
for
know.
any diorama. Stick that in front of a hero with the shield up, and you'd have a very cool scene. later.
Even just have like a camp scene with it leaping out from the forest behind them.
Find yourself a model of a gladiator. Father to a murdered son, so on and so forth. I just have him there.
It was his birthday recently this week. There you go, Russell Crowe. So there you go. Happy birthday, Russell Crowe.
Nice.
He'll be pleased to hear that because I know he watches.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic pick.
When he's fighting around the world.
Fantastic pick for Indie of the Week.
Yeah, very cool.
Towers of War. Some stunning fantasy miniatures for. I mean, the deathmatch game itself is good fun. Ninth Age, if people are interested, they can go to the Ninth Age or Google it, and you'll find the full rules for free. And they've recently updated some of the backstory and lore behind it because they've moved the Ninth Age away from being just a rule set that you can keep playing Warhammer with to actually being its own world as well.
Yeah.
So we'll throw the little things in the doobly-doo below. If you want to have a look at the Ninth Age as well and get an idea of what you can use these fantastic figures for. But next up, the news.
Coming to you from the center of Northwestern Europe. Covering board games, war games, card games, and all that you love. It's the news.
Diving into the news for this week, we have something that we had prepared for lovely Lloyd. But, anyway, Jerry, you get to talk about it, how cool this is. But anyway, because there are some new previews for Bot War that were sent to us by Trader Galaxies, which is very cool.
Yeah, very, very cool indeed. As somebody not a million miles away from me would say. So the idea behind these, if you're unaware, Bot War is essentially a rebellion of AIs from a different plane leads to these robots crashing into a alternate version of Earth in the 80s, and you've got good guys and bad guys, and they side with various parts of humanity and kick the toys out of each other in giant robot form. Mm-hmm. Now, the new faction, the Trashers, are ones who have essentially dwarven themselves up. They've gone full Troll Slayer. They've done something so horrible that they've deliberately overridden their own, I suppose, their own personality with a Trasher command, which just replaces them sort of like a death through, to abstain themselves or absolve themselves from dishonor, and they just become these sword and axe wielding maniacs who just come swinging in there and ruffle stomping until the shame is obliterated. So if you've ever wondered why dwarf troll slayers can't be transformers, well, apparently there is no reason why you can't do this.
I'm loving the punky feel off of it.
Yeah, it's Mad Max meets Troll Slayers meets Transformers in a ridiculous blend.
I mean, clearly I need to paint these up with some of the anarchist symbols on them, or like with transfers.
Yeah, and this is a slightly new way that they've decided to launch a faction from traders, in that rather than build up over time as they have done in the past, this one's come fully formed. So every model for the faction is available in one go. So you're not having to try and play catch up over months. If people already have Valiants or Atlanteans or whoever it is for Bot Wars, then you can just go, well, I fancy playing the Trasher faction, and you can just go in there and actually get the whole thing in one go, including the amazing Trasher sword.
That's amazing.
Who want?
Nice Simpsons reference there.
Yep. Truckosaurus. He's one of the combiners, so he's about 13 centimeters tall. He's a big fella.
Wow.
Not all of them are that big, but they do these combiners, where they sort of not quite build them all together because they don't transform. game-wise. They are just sentient AI programs that are given bot forms. So it's not actually multiple machines combining, but the big combiners are just monstrous, essentially.
They are excellent, aren't they?
And are there many factions to the game, Jerry?
Oh yeah, there's quite a few. In fact, if I hop over there at the moment, there's one of the exclusives. There are two exclusives, Dicer and Fury. These are the current. So Atlanticans, Beast Lords, Coils, Deceivers, Democracy, the Infestors, Overlords, Red Star Nation, Trashers, and the Valiants. And the way it works is, in the 80s, mankind was being attacked by the Atlanticans, who came up out of Atlantis and started killing everybody with their amazing Atlantis-like technology. But unfortunately, that happened just at the same time that the Valiants and the Deceivers crashed into Earth, and the Valiants happened to land in the not America land, and then went, "Oh no, Atlanteans are attacking you. We'll help you in our giant stompy robot forms." And went giant stompy robot. It's an amazing story. So yeah, they've added to these, the Trashers being the exciting and new faction. You can, like I say, pick them up already in a variety of ways. So you can get them with the actual rule sets if you don't have the rule sets, or you can just buy the individual blister packs. So these are pre-orders for June, although they are hoping to start shipping in May. But it means you can go in there and grab blister packs with, I think, 3 of them in there. So Crusher, Dicer, Beat Up. That's the standard Dicer. Or you can get the big Trashosaur. Or for the very limited time, they've done the Titanic Army deal. Now, I don't know how many of these are left, because the Trash Army deal is already sold out, but there were 35 sets of the Titanic Army deal, which is all 15.
Wow.
Actually, Trashosaur is 14 centimeters tall. Nice.
Big boy.
So it's the 15 plus the 2 alternate sculpts, which are only available in this. So yeah, it's a ridiculously awesome. Is
it resin or is it metal? I can't remember what the material
Depends. It started off being metal, and then they've moved to resin. I think they may still use metal for some of the smaller figures. When I say smaller, these are sort of 40 or 50 mil. And then
the actual game scale is like 10 mil, isn't it? Or
game scale is 10 mil because the actual game itself, even though you fight with giant stompy robots, there are 10 mil human figures and Atlantican figures that you can fight against. So it plays like a big skirmish game with these stompy robots. But if you decide to play with, people in tanks or humans running down a main street, then you can actually see the sort of the 10 mil side. There is a 28 mil skirmish version as well if you don't want to go for stompy robots, but stompy robots are a thing. Why would you avoid that?
Yeah, why would you go for anything else when you have the option to have a big stompy robot?
Exactly. Yeah.
What are the options for getting into the game, Jerry? Say it was me and a mate wanting to dive in.
There's 2-player starter set, but there's also both the rulebook and a PDF. So the 2-player starter set contains some Valiants and Deceivers, and then the book or PDF can be picked up if you don't plan on playing either of those factions but want to go for somebody else. You can go that way. I'm actually hoping to interview Anthony, the guy who created it, soon, with just about the game in general, and sort of delve into what his plans are and where he's going and what he's up to. But as you can see, you've got some ridiculously stompy things, all the stompy goodness. And obviously the Atlanticans had to fight giant stompy robots with giant stompy robots.
And I mean, like, if you're wanting to build up your table, I would very, very quickly go and grab some Drop Zone Commander terrain. The cardboard terrain sets.
Would be perfect for it, yeah.
If those are still about, those would be amazing for it. You can do a nice big city for your stompy robots to go stomping around in.
Yeah. But it's fantastic. It's nice to see a new faction as well, and taking it a little bit differently, because you've got the whole backstory is very much like an AI rebellion in heaven before the bots land on Earth, and the Trashers being these people who, the initial Trashers were the people who were piloting the Valiant ship that accidentally crashed into prison and into Earth, so that they kind of wanted to obliterate their name and the shame that goes with it. And now you can just go whole hog, nutter butter down the street with a 50-foot stompy robot with swords.
I think the thing that's nice about it, the thing that's nice about it as a range as well, is that it's one of those games that kind of encourages you to paint bright colors and go for that kind of retro look from sort of that other property that includes robots that are massive.
That is very true.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot to be said for bright primary colors.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
very cool. So next up, we have a little bit of a quick news, as it were. That Great for Now Games, who a lot of people will be aware, created Test of Honor and have sort of like revamped it for its new edition of it as well, and make some amazing samurai models. Are actually going to be going to World War II next with their new game, which is going to be called OOooh Hours. So the idea behind this is that you're going to be playing as groups of commandos, SAS soldiers, that kind of thing, so sort of specialist troops behind enemy lines, sort of sneaking your way into facilities, blowing up bridges, taking out railroads, assassinating commanders of the enemy units and that kind of thing, and sort of playing through interesting stealthy scenarios that aren't all grenades and explosions and tanks and everything. It's very much more of like a personal experience, which I think is just fantastic, really. And it's the kind of side of World War II that I really like as well.
Yeah, so you can do like Pegasus Bridge or the Invasion of Holland, things like that.
Yeah. In addition to that, as well as being able to play as the commandos and that kind of side of things, you'll also get the chance to play as the people sort of in charge of these compounds and, you know, the bridges and the railroads and that kind of thing. So if you want to play as the Germans who are setting up patrol routes and getting their dogs ready to hunt down people and that kind of thing, they're also working on that side of the range as well. So there's two sides to it, which is really nice. I personally like the idea of being that person who kind of sets up the board a little bit sort of game master style and being like, I've got all the patrol routes. I'm going to try and I'm going to find you where you're sneaking behind fences and that kind of thing, hunt you down with my dogs. I think it'd be very cool. In addition to
the feeling you always wanted to play the aliens in XCOM.
Well, they have some of the coolest stuff. Why wouldn't you want to play as the massive, huge mutons that can crush people into paste? Exactly.
We're back to the whole. Why would you not want to play as giant stompy robots? It's the same kind of thing. Yeah.
The other thing I sort of mentioned to Jerry as we were sort of looking to film this as well is that I would imagine Great for Now Games are going to be making their own range of miniatures regardless, because they have been doing that quite recently. But there are some options out there from a couple of different companies that might be worth checking out. That would be a good idea, sort of like start your commando collection. So we've got, I think it's Artisan Designs and Wargames Foundry, the two that we had a peek at. So.
Yeah. The thing with this is it is literally just night missions. So these are not by any means the only matter, or the only ways you can get in there with the likes of British commandos, because you've also got resistance fighters, so you could be doing resistance, sort of blow up a railway track in France.
That'd be good.
That'd be awesome.
In which case, Wargames Atlantic is a good way to go, or you could do the very famous the long range desert group, the British Patrol, that would go through North Africa in the middle of the night and find airfields and, you know, drive in, spray machine gun fire everywhere, blow them all up, and then get out as quickly as you possibly can. So you've got things like sentry models for the Africa Corps, and you've got the various British models as well. So there's a wealth, anything you can think of, from small unit action, US Rangers attempting to knock out gun batteries on D-Day. That could be an option, or the paratroops.
Yeah, you
like
could
US
also
airborne
do
landing.
A little bit more what if, like an assault on Colditz.
Yeah.
Could do that, or take out the hard water, the heavy water plant in Telemark in Norway for the classic Heroes of Telemark, which is a terrible version of a fantastic raid. But yeah, there's lots of people out there already doing interesting stuff. And when you go into things like this, obviously we're talking about using sort of paratroops, partisans, and commandos, which are all obviously fantastic. But if you want to do the Eagle Has Landed and have your Germans attacking the fictional British village, and then you've got all your British characters and the Home Guard and people on bicycles,
that would be
that whole scene as well, where you're doing it essentially in reverse as you attempt to kill Churchill.
I see. My brain kind of goes a little bit Dad's Army. You know, your name shall also go on the list. What is it? Don't tell him, Pike.
If you want to do that, then you can also do it, because you have the Home Guard heroes there.
Oh yeah.
Which contains Pike,
Yes.
Fraser, Jones, Manring, Wilson, Godfrey, and I can't remember the captain's name. I'm sorry.
You got so far.
Mannering.
No, because the Captain Mannering in the middle, but his CEO, who would occasionally show
Wilson? Up. No, Wilson?
Well,
No,
Wilson
I don't
was lieutenant played by
yeah.
Marjorie. But anyway, yeah. There are loads of commando miniatures out there, loads of specialists, and it'll be interesting to see what they actually plan on doing when it comes to getting into the game design, because you can join the Facebook group now, and the link is in the news article there. And Graham said when they come closer to playtesting time, they will be looking for people to help out. So at the moment, the group is growing, but it's just people going, I'm interested in what you're planning. I'd love to see what you're planning on doing. Maybe you could include ... guard dogs, being tins on strings, whatever. And people are just throwing ideas in at the moment, and people are going, oh, that's good. Oh, I like that. Well, that'd be interesting.
The thing that's nice about it as a concept is that it's taking a different approach to World War II. Like I was saying earlier, obviously you've got games like Flames of War that deal with the slightly more armored element of World War II. You've got bolt action that kind of ranges between skirmishes through to full-blown battles, whereas this is a little bit more of an intimate, personal style skirmish game where you're going to potentially have like a handful of figures per side and that kind of thing. So it'll allow you to create really interesting, diverse, and incredibly cluttered, I guess would be the right word, tabletops.
Yeah.
Full of cover and things that you need to hide behind and stuff. So
yeah. And I mean, well, we're only a couple of weeks. In fact, literally a couple of weeks since the anniversary of the Saint Nazaire raid, one of the most famous World War II raids of all time, which is a prime example because you could split that down in a game like this where you don't play the whole raid out at once, but you could play taking out the pump house and have that as a little independent scenario of its own and play all of those parts. So I'm curious to see where he goes, because it seems like there are ideas of games like we talked about V Commandos last week, where you have that commando or special ops force style board game, but this is pulling it out of a board game and into a miniatures game, and it's strange where you see board games are starting to take on certain miniature game elements, and miniature games are starting to take on board game elements.
But again,
we're
if you're
starting to see a blur there.
Although, if you're looking for a miniatures range to look at, the miniatures from V Commandos would be really great for this game.
They would actually.
Yeah, that's true. There's some lovely stuff in there. So yeah, fascinating to see where they're going, and also getting the chance to get in early in the development of the game and have your say. And you've no excuse when it comes out going, oh, that's not the game I wanted to play. Join the group.
You should have helped at the beginning.
State your case for why you need whatever that is, why you need tiny Germans mounted on Alsatians running patrols around the outside of your who knows? Skiers, lots of skiers everywhere.
There's a new game coming up from Z-Man Games as well, and a board game, just literally transitioning over to board games. But it's called Cryo. So I find the concept of Cryo really, really interesting. So I just want a question for you guys. Who out of the OnTableTop team do you think would survive on a planet? If you would crash land on a planet, it was freezing, who would be the last one to survive? Who do you think?
Okay.
Jerry.
Oh.
It's interesting because,
See, here's the thing. We have done like a horrible eating challenge one time, right?
Good.
The rest of us were like, and Jerry was just like, that's rather nice. That's why I think Jerry would survive.
Protein
he would find whatever is on the planet is edible, and he's fine.
I think Jerry would accept his inevitability and would just be like, I'm just going to walk off and enjoy the planet.
Go full Captain Oates.
Whereas I think Lloyd would plan out a very ingenious way for us all to disappear.
That's true.
And use his skills in order to keep himself alive. I think that would be he'd be the dark horse of the crew, I think.
Could we, I'm just saying this, assuming we all come down together, but could we use Warren like a tauntaun? Because the game itself,
the Cryo itself. So there's 2 to 4 of you. You've crash landed onto a planet. And obviously the planet is not nice. It's not a lovely planet full of lovely food and people and loads of aliens setting up and wishing you a warm, hearty welcome. You are more than likely going to die on this planet. And what you've got to do is, against your opponents, is try to survive. And you've got to hide in these underground tunnels, build and try and salvage what's left of your ship to attempt to survive. And whoever is the last one standing within the exhibition is the winner.
The thing that I really liked about this when I was having a look at it all, when you put the news story up, was that it's got kind of really awesome engine building mechanics in it, which I love, and worker placement, which I also love. But it's also got like a little bit of backstabbing and sabotage.
Oh yeah,
because like as you're saying, the theme of it is that something goes wrong on the ship. One of you brought down the ship onto this planet.
Yeah.
And so there are still opportunities to backstab people in the middle of this as well. So it's a little bit of a nice mix between sort of the Euro game style and also that Ameria trash, however you want to say it, elements as well.
So it's Euro trash?
Yes, it's Euro trash.
It does seem like a free-for-all, and you've got to, I think my problem with this is I will always end up hiding. I'm really one of those people that will just hide and try and stay out of conflict as much as possible and hope no one wants to hurt me, and then I'm always the one person left because I hide in the shadows and I get taken down. But yeah, it does look really interesting, and I think with me, if I was to play this game especially, I'd be so busy making sure that I was safe and forgetting that everybody else is doing the same thing and someone is going to come for me at some point.
I see. If you're playing it with us, you don't really have to worry because everybody in the office kind of has like their preferred target in board games that have backstabby elements. We all do. Admit it. We all do.
Yeah.
It does seem like a nice...
My backstab element is you.
Yeah.
Warren's backstab element is you.
Yeah, mine's
Warren
Warren.
enjoys backstabbing you.
It does seem like a nice mix of different styles, and I really like the art to it. The cover is very evocative, which is always nice.
Yeah.
And then it looks like it's got really good components as well. Because, if you're going to pick up a board game, you want all the components to feel tactile and lovely and stuff. Because it's as much about the experience of moving things around on cardboard as it is actually playing the game. So.
Yeah, and it doesn't look as if it's taking up like a huge amount of table space. So this could definitely be one that could easily be brought along with you to a convention when we're allowed conventions again.
Yeah.
I think just going back to the artwork alone, I think when you talk about kind of space. Oh wow, space exploration, space exploration, and kind of you do expect the theme to be dark, but I do like how there's a lot of bright colours in this, and I find with games that are quite small as well, I always end up losing components and bits like that. So they are quite brightly coloured, and it doesn't look so sinister, even though it is very backstabby and sinister. It is very bright coloured and really does fit that kind of space theme, as it were.
Yeah. And very making giant robot crabs and sharks is always good.
Yeah.
It's good for 2 to 4 players. I wonder if they could expand it, have an expansion at some point that allows you to play a few more players on it. Because sometimes games like these are contained by the components within it, and all it needs is an expansion that adds something new and 2 new players.
See, if I was adding to this game, I would add like an alien race coming after everyone, and their goal is to murder everyone else. So make it like a more aggressive playstyle for that player. Yeah,
you could have both competitive and events kind of things.
Yeah, but you could also have it that it gives the original 4 players a reason to work together to take down the big bad before they backstab each other.
Reminds me very much of the bioterrorist expansion for Pandemic. Very cool one that sort of added a sort of threat to the game, which is very nice. But yeah, very cool stuff. Moving on from that, we also have some new stuff from P-Work Wargames. So you'll be aware that they do lots of nice gaming mats, and also they've done some MDF terrain as well. But they're sort of stepping into the realm of role-playing games as well at the moment, because they've put together these new RPG tiles that went up for sale this week. So they've designed 3 sets so far. There is the sewers, the dungeon, and the forest. And the idea is that these are MDF kits in sort of 3mm tiles and stuff that you can use to put down and create the environments that you'd be playing your role-playing games in with miniatures, Jerry. So yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say they're wrong.
Wow.
But
They've designed them with 1-inch squares cut into the designs, as you can see in some of these here, so that you can play games out like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder, which use that system for moving around grids and that kind of stuff. But in addition to the actual tiles themselves, they've also added these terrain elements as well. So you've got doors, which are really nice. You've got pillars. You've got sort of debris and ladders and things in the sewers as well. So they've really designed these up to be interesting sort of dungeon master tool sets that you could use in your encounters, which is cool. Obviously, them being MDF, you will need to do a little bit of painting on these. I reckon an airbrush would be a dream, perhaps. Spray something down into these. You'd be looking really good very quickly. If you wanted to go that extra mile on the outdoor set, you could also get some basic materials on that, do some sort of texture paints and some flock and that kind of thing. But in general, I think these are 3 really nice sets that kind of fill the gap that most people have in their collection, is that you're going to need a dungeon, you're going to need something for wilderness encounters, and you're going to need a sewer, because at some point a dungeon adventuring party will go down into a sewers. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
Especially if the GM has not written a sewer part for that adventure. That goes without saying.
It's like the start of a fantasy campaign. You kind of want to start in a tavern, don't you?
Send you into the basement or the sewer to just take care of the rat problem.
Exactly. Always got to kill the rats.
Although I will say, Ben, you see, if you want to paint these up like super quickly, you could actually take rattle cans and spray these while they're still on the sprue, and then start gluing them together.
That would be a good idea. Actually.
And then you've got your initial colors down, and then it's just weathering from there.
Yeah.
Do you remember? I'm going to say it's like Fantasy Zone International. They did
Game Zone.
That's the one thing. They did the fantasy 2D.
Game Start Edizione. That's the name.
There you go. I knew there were words, but they did the 2D stuff.
They did, yes.
And it's all done in sepia tone artwork sketches.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the burnt wood there, and I'm thinking, if you just had those standees,
would write really well.
I wouldn't even bother painting them in that case, because
I actually have that initial set, and now I think about it, that would be really cool. That would be a nice stylistic choice. I think that would be.
Well, if you want to play like a black and white miniatures RPG,
very good stuff there.
Yeah.
I was going to say something else as well, but I forgot what it was. That was it. Hopefully, the folks at P-Works are going to do a few more different sets like this, because it would be nice to see them do additional parts that they sort of tinkered around with. Because obviously, when you look at the examples like the forest, they did a really good set of like trees and bushes and that kind of thing. And if they sort of went in that direction and added more of those accessories into the different sets, I think you could have some really nice stuff to play around with, especially if you wanted to have quick and easy to paint up sort of dungeon tiles and things.
Look, there's a question for each of us. If you were doing a setting for this range, where would you go?
Oh, okay. I think it would be cool to do like
as in a terrain setting or a world setting.
A terrain setting for like a pack of this.
An urban dockside sort of.
Docks, nice.
So you've got sort of cobbly styled tiles and then some sort of wharfs and jetties and things attached to it as well. I think that would be cool. So,
I would do an internal tavern set or like a building set where you're like exploring different rooms.
Yeah,
that is nice. Good. Yeah, I would have said woodland. Woodland is already there for me. Woodland is my perfect. But if I can't have woodland, I think some kind of old village, like kind of a burnt down village,
like kind a haunted village kind of thing.
That'd be my one.
I'd probably go castle, simply because then you could just tie it in with the dungeon.
Yeah,
just a lot of Flagstone stuff.
Yeah.
Uphill, down deal.
We shall send these ideas to P-Work.
quick entrance to the dungeon or the sewers via the garderobe off the side. Yeah. Straight through the toilet and away.
Yeah, you walk into the cloakroom. Oops, trapdoor.
But yeah, very nice stuff there from the folks at P-Work, and looking forward to see what they do next. Then we've got some card game news from the folks at Plaid Hat.
We have. There is a new edition. So Ashes Reborn by Plaid Hat Games is now available. So if you don't know, Ashes was a game that was initially released back in, I think it was about 2015-ish, around
something
then.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah, and it went out of print. and it's returned. So I'd hate to say how many people have said this, but it is pretty much a phoenix rising out from the ashes. See what I did there? See what I did? With some tweaks here and there to gameplay, but there's been kind of tweaks to the previous release stuff for the cards and the expansion. So this is a mix of a card and a dice game. So if you're keen on either of the two, combined with a fantasy aspect, it's definitely worth a look.
Yeah.
So the chance you're going to get is an exact same game every single time to play in slim to none, and all the individual characters just completely vary, so you're not going to get the same game each time. Each individual character has their own different type of gameplay, and of course the artwork has been tweaked as well to bring the game into a new current state, so that's really, really nice to see.
It's very pretty.
Yeah, the best thing about Playtech Games have released like an upgrade pack as well. So for those people that have kind of invested before in the kind of previous edition of all of the different things the first time round, you can buy the upgrade pack to make sure that you got everything up to date, which I think is a really, really nice feature.
It's also handy because I just seen lurking at the bottom there that they're selling the old stock off at 50% off.
Yeah.
You get the
Oh,
upgrade
there you
kit,
go.
so you could, if you don't mind the change in artwork,
Yeah.
You can get an initial set quite cheaply, and then just upgrade it to make it compatible with the new 1.5 version. I mean, the artwork there is amazing.
Yeah, it's
and
beautiful.
I think that's one of the nice things about it as a game as a whole, is that they've made it so that everything, as Free was saying, is very unique. Like each of the different Phoenix Spawn, the heroes that you get, have this sort of set deck that has its own play style. It's a little bit like picking a champion in like a MOBA or something like that. And it feels really cool playing as like your unique hero going up against someone else.
Yeah.
And I really like the mix between the dice game and the card game, because the dice add a little bit of an element of randomness to it, but then you mitigate that by the card choices you make and sort of what you do from turn to turn. So it's got a really nice feel that sort of like steps beyond a normal card game, which I think is really good. But yeah, really good fun. I played the original game, and it was a lot of fun. So it'll be nice to dive back in and maybe give it another go. Actually,
are the dice set? So is it the same dice for every character, or do characters have slightly different dice? In the way, sometimes you'll get a defensive character might have more shields, and an attacking character might have more hits, type of thing, or is it?
So I believe that there are certain dice that apply to multiple heroes. So a dice set is like tied to like 3 or 4 of them,
right? So
and then their cards, and then their cards do different things based on the faces that are revealed when you roll them and stuff, or well, not roll them, but use them on the tabletop, which is cool. So
I think what's really nice that Playtech have come out and said is obviously people that have invested so much money into kind of the equivalent of a living card game is that there is the worry that it will go out of print again, because that was the reason why the first lot did, because it did go out in print, and they've added a subscription service, and with kind of it's around $30 every couple of months, you can literally get the new installments, a new expansion sent over to you without worrying about falling behind as well. So I think that is really good, and they said they're not going to shut down so long as they've got subscribers, so the more people that are interested, the more stuff that's going to be sent to them.
it's very cool.
I like that, because it means that, say you're playing catch up, you don't have to worry about missing a release or knowing where the news for a new release is going to drop.
They've done a good job with Team Covenant, who do a lot of this stuff for other card games as well, to try and like put together a nice service for everyone. So it's really good to see them doing that.
I have to say, $30 a month isn't particularly egregious either, because I know how much I was spending when I used to play things like Magic or Mythos or
Netrunner.
Any of them. Well, no, I never
It's
played
$30 every couple of months, so it will only take you.
It's even better.
So it only takes $30 every couple of months to make sure that you stay current. So brilliant.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Moving from a dice card game hybrid to a board card game and miniature hybrid, we have some new stuff for Warhammer Underworlds from the guys at Games Workshop. So last weekend they announced that the pre-orders this weekend are going to be for a new warband for the current season, set in Dire Chasm, which is the Crimson Court. So if you're a fan of your vampires, as a lot of people are right now, getting those undead vibes, you've got this new warband of 4 vampires to throw into the mix. On obviously, I'm fairly sure a lot of people are getting some heavy Warhammer Fantasy vibes from these. Oh, look, it's the Von Carstein family again. Yeah, stunning models, as always, when it comes to Warhammer Underworlds that they've put together for these. And I love all the character that's built into each of them.
Yes.
They have also said that it's possibly one of the most complex yet rewarding warbands to play as of yet, which is really cool. So they've really put a lot of detail into making them an interesting warband for people who are maybe veterans of Warhammer Underworlds. In addition to that as well, if you're interested in diving into Warhammer Underworlds and you're a little confused by the likes of Shadespire and Beastgrave and Diachasm, all these boxes, well, they've tried to condense all of that into just one new 2-player starter set, which is the one you can get here. So this contains 2 warbands. There's the Storm of Celestus and Drepers Wraith Creepers. I had to say it in a French accent for some reason. Who are your sort of like box standard Stormcast Nighthaunt style warbands that you can use in the game that can be used beyond this core set in the wider world of Warhammer Underworlds as well, if you so prefer. There's even an expansion card pack that comes with this, separately, that you can use to sort of build your decks in different ways and that kind of thing. They've put everything in this box that you would need for 2 players to get started, and then expand beyond that and maybe go and look at some of the other warbands that are out there as well.
Are they
go on.
I was going to say, are they new miniatures? Because I know generally anytime they've done an Underworlds box, they've either been brand new or they show up here first, I suppose, because you tend to get these scenic bases and the like, which you don't get with the standard runouts of a lot of the Stormcast.
Now, I think they're unique sculpts, but they are very akin to models that have come before that were available as part of the Soul Wars box. So they may be slightly different, but obviously because they've got these sort of integrated bases there, I think they are new. So keep that in mind if you want to maybe go and pick these up as well.
Cool.
But yeah, very nice.
These are 32 mil, yeah?
Yeah, so sort of like 28, 32 mil. So they've got that kind of extra heroic level to them that most of the Age of Sigmar models do. But they'll no doubt find a home in many people's wider Age of Sigmar armies as well. So yeah, very nice. Very nice.
Especially those.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine despite having the terrible overbite, they all seem to suffer from here.
Yeah.
There's no disguising that when you walk down the street.
No.
I like them because even though they've got the heavily ornate armor, with the exception of, I suppose, Red Skull there in the middle, there's nothing on the armor that is ridiculously over the top. Compared to some previous iterations, shall we say. That hair is mental.
Yeah.
And that is very 80s.
I was going to say, you can do some pretty good headbanging with that hair, to be fair.
You can do.
Yeah.
Maybe it's some sort of reference to the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson.
Well, I mean, the guy with the big 2-handed mace, he kind of doesn't want to shrug or he's going to squish his head.
No, that's fine. He's grand. He's content. I'd hate to see whatever he pulled those horns off, though.
Yeah.
That's some badass vampire strength.
Yeah.
These guys just went, I need new armor. I'm having those.
Yeah. These guys don't sparkle. We'll put it that way.
No.
In addition to some new vampires, what would be, a collection without some vampire hunters? Segue. And so, as well as the Crimson Court that was previewed for Warhammer Underworlds, we also got to look at 2 new miniatures that are coming to Cities of Sigmar armies as well in the near future. So, as part of a Broken Realms book, we're going to be able to fight as Galen Vendenst and Doraliah Vendenst, who are a father and daughter team who are out fighting for the Order of Vizier to hunt down vampires, monsters, and all sorts of things that go bump in the night, and put an end to them, probably by either shooting them or cutting their heads off. I don't think these folks are going to make any friends anytime soon.
No.
That is quite the beefy crossbow.
That is.
So
wooden stakes for the win.
Yeah. Probably a little bit like Jelson Darroch from Cursed City. I would imagine these are carved from the trees of Ashki, so they're going to burn when they hit vampires, which will be very interesting to see. But Galen is a little bit more of a up close and personal gentleman. He gets his sword out and cuts people's heads off when he gets up close, whereas Doraliah is very much more of a ranged individual who uses that crossbow, as you can see there, to pin vampires to walls and make them explode into soot.
Yeah, well, we've all seen Buffy.
We've all seen Buffy and stuff, Buffy. Yeah. So, but yeah, really awesome new models coming out for the Broken Realms and the Cities of Sigmar. I think these would be absolutely awesome when paired with miniatures like the Flagellants from the old Empire range and the new Cities of Sigmar range. And also some of the great swords as well that they did the plastic set for. I think they'd look fantastic alongside these. I also hope that this is going to be a really nice step forward for Games Workshop to do something about the Cities of Sigmar that isn't just the free guild. Because obviously that's nice, but it's all of the old stuff from Warhammer that's been transported over into the modern realms. It would be nice to see them go down the route to create more interesting models, a lot, like the Vendents, that kind of give you interesting sort of smaller sub-factions within the Cities of Sigmar that you can play as, because it would be amazing to play as an Order of Azir army led by witch hunters and warrior priests and that kind of thing. I think that'd be really awesome. So,
cool.
So it's also nice that they put options in there as well.
Yes.
I noticed that.
Yeah. So Galen can come with either the sword or the pistol outstretched, or the sword or the torch, etc. And
or
then
you could go twin pistol action.
You could, And then Doraliah goes with it's got the wide brimmed witch hunter hat.
I quite like the hat.
I think it's really cool.
It is cool.
It suddenly gives her a bit more of a sinister edge, which I think is nice.
Go full Solomon Kane.
Yeah. But absolutely fantastic miniatures, and hopefully we'll see more of the Broken Realm stuff very soon. We've obviously got that big beast man, possibly a Kernothi guy coming down the road. Awesome stuff for those people who want to make alternative armies.
Fascinating stuff. Well, that was a whole host of delightful news, Benjamino. All right then, Ben. So, what 3D printing are we looking at this week?
So, you will hopefully remember a couple of months back, we delved into Hero Forge and what they were doing with their system currently. So, they obviously have been running a fantastic program where you can create your own characters in it using different accessories, and then you can get them printed off in STL form, or you can get them sent to you and that kind of thing. But they also dived into the world of doing full color 3D printing. And so we put together a little competition where we were like, make your favorite character. We'll pick them out, as we did on, I think it was Blue Monday, wasn't it, this year?
Yeah,
and we got the miniature actually finished for the individual. So Justin printed off a copy of her own, and we also got the full color version of it sent to us as well.
Yeah. And of course, it had to be a goblin in a pink Speedo.
Of course.
Speedo goblin was prime. It was perfect.
Cannot unsee.
It didn't have to be, but it was.
It's the belly button ring that does it for me. That just ties it all together.
Yeah, all the bling on the fingers.
Yeah.
Things.
So this is, I suppose, the sculpt, if you will, that the winner came up with. And then we sent away for both the full color 3D print one and then the STL.
See how they print at home.
Yeah, to see how they look in comparison. And we have them here.
Wow.
Yeah.
You printed these out. You printed out the luminous green one, Justin.
Yes.
May I congratulate on the color of the luminous greenness.
Well, you see, that's a very deliberate thing for me. I like that particular resin because of the fact that it's got a little bit of transparency. So whenever the first layers are printing, if the very first layer doesn't catch, it can still shine through.
Right.
They build up to catch the bed, and then you get a more consistent run of prints out of it, I find, rather than using an opaque one.
Cool. So the thing about the print that you did in the studio, how How easy was it for you? Was it a simple thing, or was it was there some tricks you needed and that kind of thing? Or
it just comes down to practice with the slicer program when you're building your scaffolding on to find like all of the little islands.
Right.
So it's basically what I did for him was I basically just kicked it on its back, let it do its auto scaffold, and then I went hunting around the miniature from in below, looking for any points that were like appearing from nowhere as I went up through the levels.
Mhm.
And it honestly wasn't bad for this one. You know, with the way it was designed, you know, the cloak and everything came together okay. I think the mushrooms were a little bit tricky,
right.
just because of the angle I put them to, but it
Yeah.
came out in one shot.
Awesome.
Was there much in the way of scaffolding on it?
There was a fair bit. If you have a look at the back shot, you can maybe still see some of the little dimples.
We'll have a look at the back shot.
The Lloyd shot.
Lloyd shots.
So you see on the rock there, you can see 3 little points.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which is where your scaffolding would connect. But the way I generally set it is less than a millimeter connection point on those.
Do they just then like
They
snap
peel
off
off-
effectively, or
Peel
yeah?
off because it's such a small connection point.
Okay.
And so long as you've given the miniature the proper curing time and bath afterwards.
Mhm.
So what I do with these is I'll take them out and drop them into an IPA bath, so an alcohol bath, and I'll leave it there for maybe 4 or 5 hours. Then I'll bring it out and just
Mhm.
give it a little bit of a rinse under a tap, and then just
Yeah.
let it dry.
Before we move on to the full color one that's obviously in the image as
Mhm.
well, are there any tips you would suggest to people who are making miniatures in Hero Forge to make it so that it wouldn't be a pain in the ass? You know what I mean?
Well, if
Like-
you go back to the Mr. Higgins,
Right.
I can actually show you.
Oh,
So you see where his cloak's coming through.
hmm
Now, what he did was very good. You see the way the cloak connects into the body?
Yeah.
yeah.
Having that, like a floating cloak between the body and the actual miniature, it basically gives you a failure point, which I find generally always fails for me.
Right.
The other thing is don't clutter things too much.
Mhm.
Because if you put everything, including the kitchen sink on, again, it's just layers upon layers of stuff that you're then having to try and scaffold onto to find those
Right.
endpoints. And if you miss them, you'll
Mhm.
either get like a big flat spot on the miniature where it's been trying to come back onto itself until it hits a layer where it can catch again.
Mhm.
And that can be really bad for your 3D printer as well, because if you don't clean the tank and you reset the bed and there's something stuck on the bottom, you can crush through and actually break the screen in below.
Oh wow.
And
okay.
I've had to do the repair for that once.
Yeah.
I will not name names. Warning. Where it got crushed, and I had to replace the screen, and it is a little bit of a pain in the butt to switch out a
Right.
screen on a 3D printer that's one of those types.
Mm.
But that's out of the Anycubic Photon, the older one,
Mm.
and I find it does just a great job.
So from start to finish, how long did this take you?
For that miniature, call it about a day's work.
Okay.
Because from bringing it into the slicer program, making sure I had it just the way I want it, I spent maybe hour and a half to 2 hours just tweaking and playing with it.
Mm.
But that's me being a little bit like overzealous with it.
Mhm.
And then the actual print time was about 7-8 hours for the layer height I'd set. Because the
Fair
thinner
enough,
you go, the better detail you get, but the more layers you're doing, so the longer it takes for it to go up, down,
Mhm.
print layer, up, down, print layer.
Speaking of detail,
Mhm.
because obviously he is glowing green, so it's a bit difficult for us to see.
Yeah.
How sharp is the detail on the STL file? Because obviously we got this.
The detail is
it's
sharper
different.
than the color print, I would say.
Oh.
Because if you think, so the way the color print goes, I think it's like a powder print they're doing
Yeah.
versus a resin print. So it
Mm.
actually prints a little bit softer.
Hmm.
Because I think the best thing, if you go to the front and have a look at the face detail, or even the hair detail there, you can sort of see it. It's just a little
Yeah,
bit softer
yeah.
on the color one.
The thing that I've noticed with the color ones, and we'll get onto this when I show off a miniature that I created, and also I think you've done one as well, Justin. Is
Oh
that-
yeah, I did too.
Yeah. I think with the color prints, going for bold colors is very advisable
Mm.
because I think it shows off everything about the model in a lot more detail. Like as you can see here, because of the bright colors used on the book,
Yes.
it shows up the faces in it a lot more, and you can see the same thing around the body and the elements of the staff. You can actually see the wood grain in it as well because of the choice of color there.
Yeah,
Well,
although I do
it's
think
darker one,
the
but-
final print comes out a little bit more vibrant than what's in the builder.
Ah.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, there is a difference in tone, I guess you'd say, between the
Mhm.
two.
Yeah.
But yeah, so bear that in mind when it comes to the two of
Yeah.
them.
But I mean, like for one of the first ones to bring it to market, it's really, really good.
Yeah. So have we got yours in this gallery as well then, Justin?
Yeah. So I made 2. I've sent the file for one of them. So I
oh, look, it's you, Justin.
Well, we've also been playing the Warhammer 40k role-playing game, Wrath and Glory. And I decided to do myself as my character, who is a biker pyromancer. He rocks around with a force rod, 2 last pistols, and a little ceremonial dagger. And of course, it's me, so he has to be smoking a cigar.
I was going to say, brilliant cigar, like brilliant.
You look like a heretic, Justin. I think somewhere an Inquisitor is hunting you down.
No. I'm working for an Inquisitorial agent. This is kosher. Yeah. And then there's how it turned out. So the one thing I'll say is, you see some of the metallics?
Yeah.
Didn't come out exactly the way I had hoped. They're a little bit more of a matte finish.
Yeah, that's true.
So I would say whenever you're building your stuff, go for more like block colors for that finish.
Yeah.
And of course, the second one I did was just a mini-me rocking around with a Thompson submachine gun, because why not?
I was going to say, it looks basically like you now, Justin, just without the hoodie. So
hoodie and headphones on, that is just you all the time.
Yeah. I did mistake the headphones for some kind of like Shakespearean haircut there.
Oh, I thought the same thing.
No, but I just thought, you know what, it's a little bit fun. And the nice thing is, so I've got the colored print there as well.
Mm-hmm.
That is the premium plastic print, I think, or like
That's what I did for mine as well.
Yeah, and it comes pre-primed, so you can just go straight to painting.
Brilliant.
Yeah. But it's nice to see that how because obviously with the goblin, you've got those really bright luminescent colors and how that translated over. And then with yours, which has got a little bit more of that grim darkiness to it, how that translated.
Yeah.
And I'd say that a lot of it has for the most part worked, especially when you see some of the shading elements that have gone into the cloak and sort of the outfit.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only one detail I wish would come out a little bit sharper, and that's the eyes.
Right. Yeah.
You've lost that.
That's my one little point where I really, I know they're going to be working on it. It's the one point I really want them to work on, just to have that final fidelity in the features of the face.
Yeah. The no turned out quite nice, actually.
Yeah, it did.
Result. The nice thing about going for the slightly more pricey hard plastic print as well is that you don't get you don't get as many of the lines.
Yeah, you see, I think I might have went for the lower one that's like 20 quid.
Right, okay. Well, I went for the higher one, so we'll see the comparison soon. So.
Yeah. But even then, they're so minor. Once you start laying your paints down on there, those are going to fill in and smooth out.
Yeah.
But I think in general, it's a really nice way to look at creating a very unique role play character. Because I was talking to my friends about this, and they were like, "How much was it?" Blah blah blah. And I was like, "Well, it is quite expensive when you think you factor in a lot of the different elements for it. Yeah. But if you're going to be making a unique character for your role playing games, it's pretty damn good." Well. I did say, just make sure that your campaign doesn't die on its ass, because if it does, then your character is now, effectively going to have to be redone for a new campaign later on down the line. So either
why, Jerry?
Because it's been Easter recently.
Because you can't stop me.
Yeah.
I'm in your character giving you eggs.
The egg of doom.
Yeah, that is the other nice thing as well with these characters. You can literally share them with people and ask them what they think, and they can make tweaks and share it back to you, going, here's what I would do to the character.
I'm very quickly going to minimize you, and then you have to tell me to unminimize you later, because one of the things Hero Forge do is they update every Tuesday. They put new stuff in.
Nice.
And this Tuesday past, they added wheelchairs.
Oh, brilliant.
Modern Fantasy Battle and Fantasy
For those wanting to do combat wheelchair characters and stuff like that. So
that's fab.
Yeah.
Which is something where a couple of other companies I've seen. Although your massive vape pen is going right through your radio.
It's my force staff.
You'd have to fix that.
Have you ever seen those people who are just going along on a bicycle and they just jam something in the wheel to make them tip?
Oh, yeah. I just want flames coming off of that wheelchair now. That's what I want.
How does the motorcycle look?
How does the motorcycle look?
Yeah, I'm
which one? You've got a sci-fi and a regular.
Go sci-fi.
Go sci-fi.
Sci-fi, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
The egg completes it.
Got to keep the egg.
It's like, what does it mean?
Again, I mean, like, maybe it's just me being a young hooligan. If you take the flames out of the hand so he's holding it, he's just planning to drive by someone and just egg them.
Yeah, it does.
Visitor! Heretic! Bird!
The STL files, are they a lot cheaper to buy them?
They are.
Yeah.
They are very cheap to buy. But
I want to say it's about
to...
$6 for the STL.
That's not bad at all.
And then they do little sales every now and again where it drops down, by a couple of dollars, so you can get them like half price type of thing.
Yeah.
So
although the top end they do is you can actually get it cast in metal.
Wow.
Printed in metal, which is quite cool.
But so as well, obviously, Justin, you went and did like a color and the plastic version. I also did sort of the hard plastic one and a color one as well.
Nice.
So for me, obviously, with Stargrave coming up soon, I thought it'd be cool to try and put together a little bit of a character that could maybe lead a crew in Stargrave.
This does kind of have flavors of Ben on it.
Well, yes, that may be some of the influence of the face.
Okay.
But don't give me an egg, Jerry, whatever you do.
Right.
But so what, interestingly, I had heard about the whole idea of the metallics being an issue.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I thought I'd go for that kind of plastic sci-fi that you sometimes get in high sci-fi films. And so I went with that style, but then also went with the bright colors again across the model because I thought that would be the best way to pick out a lot of the details. Yeah. And I think in general, it's come out quite nice.
I mean, I would maybe...
Have you used a very bright flash? Because you seem to have, this one in particular, the hair is definitely lighter here. It looks like the photograph has bled out some of the colors.
It may be just the light that I filmed, that I took the photo under.
Because it's certainly darker in this one.
Yeah.
There's also a little bit of a loss of detail on the thigh armor piece.
Yeah, so the hex detail on there is missing a little bit, mainly because I'd probably put it down to the dark color choice. I think maybe if I'd gone for a brighter color and then maybe done some contrast on it, perhaps it would have picked out a little bit more.
Yeah. Although, Ben, see for that miniature, I would love to see it with just like a little soft tone over the lot.
Well, you see, that's the thing I was thinking about, is whether or not that would work or whether or not it would just ruin it.
Yes. The second one.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why, because I have a Draenei I made based on my character, and I was curious as to see whether or not you can paint over or repaint them.
Yeah.
I haven't taken pictures of this, so you'll have to take my word for it. Now, the stepping is more pronounced on these. As you can see, certainly around here, there's a lot more lines. So if you're planning on painting over these, you cannot use that as a base layer as is.
Okay.
Because a wash, or in my case, I used an oil wash, and it went everywhere. And it just means that every surface ends up looking like corduroy. It's all lines because the wash will only go into the lines, and there's hundreds or thousands of them.
So like a denim textured miniature.
What you need to do is gloss varnish it first.
Right.
Possibly a couple of coats, because gloss is self-leveling. Once that's on, matte varnish, because then matte allows you to paint again, because you've got a key surface, but you've now got a solid surface to put something over the top of it where it's not going to go into all of these lines, because every groove on this backpack, and they go in different directions depending on what will suck in. So you'll end up with these jigsaw pattern looks to your miniature.
Okay.
But yeah,
good to know.
It's not one to do right off the bat.
The thing that I quite liked about how it turned out is if you get a look at the face again, you can. I'm not sure whether or not it shows in the photo, but it did actually pick out the blue in the eyes.
It did, yeah.
Well, you can't really see it too much there, but though you did actually pick out the little blue bits. So picking a sort of lighter color there did actually work on those. And there's a little bit more definition to the facial features as well, perhaps maybe with the beard choice as well. But yeah.
I made the face on mine kind of narrow. Yours is a little broader.
Yeah. My big old fat face, Justin. Yeah.
I said nothing.
Hidden by the beard. But yeah, so in general, I was very impressed by it. And obviously, it's a very stylistic choice to print your miniatures like this.
Yeah.
Because in essence, it's probably not going to look like anything else that you've got in your collection. But if you are doing something role-play based, then I think it's a pretty good idea.
I have to say, I think we talked about this possibly during Blue Monday, or maybe I just talked about it in general afterwards. Yes, there's a slight softening in detail when you get them printed in color.
Yeah.
But the trade-off is it is unique to you.
Yeah.
And if you were to go to a sculptor and go, I would like a unique miniature, please. Here are my specifications. I want sci-fi armor. I want a gun. I want a beard. Blah blah.
It'll cost you quite a lot.
It will cost you
Yeah.
substantially more than this. And then if you go to somebody and go, maybe you're not a painter, and a lot of role players aren't painters. You often hear this, that the pre-colored stuff gets used because they're not painters.
They create something immediate for them on the tabletop.
Yeah, because again, if you go to somebody who paints commission painting, you'll pay about the same for even a more basic color scheme. So yes, you lose a bit in definition, and you lose a bit in the colors. I mean, between both the Eggman and yourself, I think that there's still. I mean, you've got shading and highlighting there, which you wouldn't get from commission painter unless you're going to start paying probably triple digits in cash money.
Now, there is one other aspect to this. So you see the one that I've got just in grey there. I still colored that whenever I had it in the builder.
Right.
Sort of like test color schemes.
Yeah.
And figure out what colors I wanted to put where before laying paint to brush.
Yeah.
That is a good way of doing things. And I know a lot of people who use the renders or they sign up for is it Hero Forge Pro, where you get the tokens and stuff made. So there are lots of different options, especially if you're doing digital stuff, which is cool.
What I love about this is that just kind of where I've had to play with it as well is that there is literally options for everything. And for me to try and find a miniature that has these on it, they're in here. They're in here. They exist. And it's like, if I was to try and find something for a D&D campaign or for whatever it might be, that might look like myself, or to have that, I wouldn't be able to find. I'd have to really look for something to have this kind of hairstyle. And this is in here. And if I just wanted the SDL file just to download, it is quite cheap. So
I'm waiting for Jerry to give me buns now.
Oh,
it's on your head.
They put jodhpurs in as well for pants this week. I haven't done for the jodhpurs, but I can't find them. But so we've seen the I suppose the STL printed, and we've seen the color version. You also got a Harry Dresden model.
I did, because nobody makes a Harry Dresden model, apart from, and I found this out a couple of years ago, Michael from Oathsworn did sculpt a Harry Dresden, and he sent me a picture of it once for himself because no one was doing it, and he contacted them about making a line of miniatures, and they never got back to him. Now he's more successful with Burrows and Badges. Maybe they'll do it.
Time to pick up that business card again.
But because nobody makes miniatures for Harry Dresden, I was like, well, he's one of my favorite literary characters.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick him on the table, get a miniature done for him. So that was the version of it that I did in render form. This is from quite a while back now, actually. But this was him with his little cat as well, which I thought was fantastic. So always got to put that in there, although that's missing in the original, in the finished model.
Oh, no.
But yeah, it was nice playing around with the tools once again, and it allows you to make very unique and interesting characters, as we've already discussed. So it was very easy to get a Harry Dresden that looked like the ones off a lot of the covers of the graphic novel, well, not graphic novels, but the comic books and that kind of thing as well. But I thought, maybe get him printed. And so this is I think there should be an undercoated version of him above. There we go. So this is the hard plastic, highest end premium version.
right.
You can see the difference instantly.
And immediately the amount of detail that you see in the face and the hair is like,
We can even frown lines you can see in his forehead. Like,
Well, I think that's actually stepping lines.
But it also works as frown lines.
well, to be fair, you've got frown lines.
Now, the thing that is interesting is that obviously, I mean, Dresden wears the big trench coat, and so you've got a duster. So you've got to put that on the model.
Oh yeah.
But it does create large areas of just blank material, which does show up like a lot of the marks that you get in the process. Thankfully, the undercoat does kind of make up for that.
Yep.
Which was just a grey sear over the top. Is it grey sear? No, Wraithbone over the top of it, which kind of helped with the model.
I wonder what they make them out of, because I know, having been looking at this recently, I know you can use acetone to smooth off some of these, or if they aren't made of the right plastic, acetone won't work, so there's no point in doing a vapor bath. but you can use sandpaper and get a mirror finish with sandpaper.
Oh,
If you're prepared to sit there with sanding sticks from like 400, well, there's not much, so you're not doing a huge amount. You're not having to work away massive lines, but start with like a 400 grit, wet dry, and then work up to the sort of thousands for a mirror polish.
You see, that's far too much work for me. So
the only time I've seen
normal day in the
anyone
McCabe household for me.
The only time I've seen someone go that far is whenever it's someone who's like, I don't know, mashing up like a bunch of cucumbers, compressing them down, and then sharpening them into a knife.
Wow.
There are videos of this on YouTube.
Wow.
Sure.
I'm really. I was going to say, I'm really sorry to say, but Justin sneezed a minute ago, and it's literally agging me that I haven't said bless you yet. So sorry about that.
I'll say that the priming does seem to cover up a lot of the.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is your one came as bare plastic. Mine came pre-primed.
So I guess that's one of the... I mean, you pay extra for the quality, but then they don't do the priming stage, I guess. But that makes, for me, I like working up from the wraith bone, so that it makes sense to me, to what I wanted to do. But once some paint was down on the model as well, I think it painted up quite nice. It painted up basically like any normal model, really.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
And I was good. I swapped out. It's really bugging me that I can't remember the name of his cat, but I swapped out the cat for, oh my God, I've lost the name of the skull. Oh, what's the name of the skull? I completely blanked on Harry Dresden.
This is you're going to remember it at 3 a.m. and be like,
the skull is called Bob. There we go.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
sure.
Jesus.
Grebo. I'm just going to call Grebo.
But yes, so I swapped out the cat for Bob the skull, so I've got him on the base. Ideally, I would have liked to go in there and maybe do some like runic lettering on him, because that's what the skull looks like in the books and stuff. But I decided I wouldn't bother too much with that. But I know, Jerry, I'm so sorry. Get
a micro pen, just draw it on.
I'll probably do that in the end. I need to do that for lots of other stuff like tartan and things, so I'm probably going to do the same thing. But you can see, obviously the coat is black, so you're not going to see a lot of the kind of the marks from the 3D printing, the stepping. Yeah. But when you see something like, for example, the gun, where you've got the lighter color over the top of it, it does pick out a little bit more of that.
Just again, a bit of texturization, but I'm okay with that.
And you're not going to be seeing these from this close anyway when you're playing with them. So I think it turned out quite nicely from sort of the initial concept of the render through to a painted miniature that you've done yourself. Now, I would say that in the round, if you're looking at using Hero Forge, this is probably the scale you want to go at in terms of expense if you're going to be making a unique character for a role play, I would say, because you get the detail, it enables you to just sit down and paint it, and it's not been overly expensive. So if the campaign does die on its arse, you're not going to be out of pocket. So, but yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the process, and in actual fact, the delivery of it all was pretty on point as well. It was very quick, considering the 3D printing that they do in the color side of things as well. So.
Yeah. One final warning for anyone using the system: be wary of fairy wings. Because
that sounds like a very cryptic.
I know.
Well, no, it's Warren did some D&D miniatures for his kids a few years ago, and they were all like fairies with like wings and bows, and just all those big hanging out components made it a little bit more of a challenge to get a good print out. So be aware of that. And
I imagine that comes down more to practice and knowing how to do it. If you're 3D printing yourself,
whereas if they did it, I suppose,
just let them.
Yeah,
that's what you're paying professionals for.
Yeah.
You do it so I don't have to. Dance for me and then throw pennies at their feet.
I believe they both came through Shapeways as well. So, and they have a European distributor, so that's why the time lag between creating it and getting it out there is pretty short.
Yeah, I think between ordering and receiving for my ones, I think the gap was about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So it all depends on how much of a backlog they have at the time as well.
Yeah. But in general, a really interesting system, and I will say that I was very skeptical of exactly how full color would look, but I think for as you were saying, Justin, a company doing it to
It's
first
only
off in the
gonna get
market. It's only going to get better. I think it looks pretty nice for the purposes you're going to use it for.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see where it goes next. Really.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Terrific. Nice choice, Benjamino.
Did you win one of our prizes? Find out on our prize claim center over at OnTableTop.com. Here we list all our previous prizes and those who have won. If you see your username, fill out the form to claim your prize. All prizes must be claimed within 30 days.
Shall we move on and take a look at some Kickstarters?
we
Yes.
shall.
Yes. I've been waiting for this.
So yeah, should we beat around the bush a little bit more?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me anymore.
Yeah. What is it that we're talking about? Ragnarok, Snagnarok. What is it?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Let's skip it. Let's just do one Kickstarter this week.
Yeah. But no, we won't deprive you of the end of days, Justin. So the first one we're going to be looking at is from Monolith Edition, who have been rocking Kickstarter. Some might say Ragnarocking.
Oh!
With Mythic Battles Ragnarok. And as you are quite the lover of this game, Justin, I think we'll let you go through this one.
Well, I mean, like when the original one, Pantheon, came out, it was a game system that just instantly clicked with me. I understood what I was looking at, what I was seeing on the table, the tactics to play. So my inner nerd brain just it went to its happy place. And seeing this come out and having a copy here in the studio that we're hopefully going to be doing a Let's Play for soon has made me even happier, seeing just all of the different things they're doing to like tweak and change the game just a little bit to bring it up and make it a little more tactically deep.
Mm-hmm.
So the big thing is, of course, we are looking at Ragnarok. So it's all of the broad spectrum of the Norse and sort of Dane pantheon style thing going on. They've been busting through stretch goals like crazy, and my word, you get an absolute boatload in this Kickstarter if you're diving in on it. So I'm going to go full disclosure. I've gone all in.
Yep.
So
there was no doubt about it, was there? There wasn't.
Yeah, this one is going to just be arriving at my doorstep in the future. So I'm going to have everything, and I'm going to love it and enjoy it and take it home and just put it on my shelf and look at it, and it's going to be
and hug it and pet it and call it George.
Yes. Yes, exactly. But I mean, like I am super happy with what we're seeing. So main game mechanics, if you know Pantheon, you know this game. The additional things that they've done to it, they've added some new terrain types to your boards. So things like frost areas, where if you're not a frost creature and you move into them, you're going to start taking damage. Or if you're a frost creature, you're not going to take damage. For units, they've added Jarls. So normally a unit is just a bare bones little bunch of guys who's running around the field, grabbing the godly power stones to bring them back to the god and go, "Here you are, master, I found it for you." Whereas in this, with the Jarls, you can actually begin to add special rules to them. So again, it's another layer of tactical depth, where say you're playing with the Berserkers. There's one of them that whenever they're retaliating, it can give them like a +2 to their combat power, or that they can ignore the first wound they take every round, or if the unit's destroyed, they can come back without having to pay an Art of War card. So that's a really nice additional piece to it. You've, of course, got some of your 3D terrain elements in there. So Warren's going to get his 2.5D. You're going to have all of your scenarios and stuff in there, coming in dual English and French, which always makes me happy. And I enjoy this game for the fact that it just makes my tactical brain happy to look at it and play with it. Mm-hmm. And they're applying everything they've learned from the first 2 campaigns that this ran through. Mm-hmm. And my God, the stretch goals is all I can say, because I mean they're already over $1 million. Yeah.
So amazing. The core game comes with it's Thor, Hel, Freya, and Loki. So you've got those 4 gods.
Loki.
Yeah. You've then got the 4 monsters. Yeah. Again, Loki's sculpt still kind of, it's just like bothers me a little bit, and I have seen.
Is it because you're waiting for Marvel to come in and sue them?
No, it's just.
Are you sure?
It's just a kind
because in all the Lokis I've ever seen, that one is the one who screams, "I've just stepped straight out of the Loki films."
Yeah,
he does have that. But it's that weird pose with the 2 hands out.
Yeah. I don't mind the 2 hands out. It's the fact he is literally wearing Loki's outfit from Marvel's movies. He's got a frock coat on. When did they invent frock coats? I'm pretty sure not in Scandinavia. Anyway,
but in addition to the gods, you've also got like the sort of core set of
the monsters,
the monsters and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and you've got the heroes and stuff.
Yeah. Interestingly, obviously, Loki's coat aside, I think one of the nice things about what they've done with this is that they've actually almost looked at not necessarily, I guess, like more sort of fantasy film style sort of Norse mythology.
Mhm.
They've actually looked back a little bit more at that kind of the original stuff. So, for example, with Thor's hammer, I really liked that they actually made it so that the handle was short.
Yep.
Because that's what it's like in the Norse myths,
Mhm.
rather than it being like the Mjolnir that you see from like the Marvel movies and that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Just don't piss off dwarves.
And I also liked that all the dragons, quote unquote, the worms in the game, like so obviously you got Nidhogg and that kind of stuff. They've all been done as those kind of snake-like dragons that you see in a lot of the old artwork, as compared to the traditional dragon that you might assume from like Western mythology and stuff as well, which is really good.
Now, you've also got things like Odin and Heimdall are coming in. You've got your Valkyries.
The Asgard expansion,
Yeah. And then just some additional like troops and monsters there as well.
It's a draft-based game, isn't it?
It is, and that is one of my favorite aspects of the game. How many times have you came to the tabletop to play a war game, and your buddy across from you has brought the same list that he has been bringing for the last 6 months? I find that incredibly boring. With this, because of the draft mechanics. So say, Ben, we were going to play a game, and you knew that I absolutely adore using Fenrir for my tactics in the game. You can just go, no, well, I'm going to take Fenrir, so you can't have them. And now you have to learn new tactics and play differently. And I think that's a great thing about this game is you can, even before you're playing the game, you can kind of like screw your friend over from the tactics that they're wanting to play and make them think about the game in a different way.
Does that mean the owner of the game is going to have an unfair advantage because they'll actually know, if you know what the best combos and things are initially for the first multiple games, then you're going to have free reign over your opponents?
Depending on how hard you're playing and how deeply you dive into it. Because,
yes is the answer.
Well, hang on. Look, I tell you what, Jerry, go to the original Mythic Battles Kickstarter for me, because it went absolutely bananas, and I'm hoping this one does the same.
Right.
So for it ended up with, I think, like 55 stretch goals, which was like 55 different units.
I have them sitting over there on my table.
Which means, because of that, basically you had so much that you would have to just there you go, that's the one. So if you think each miniature has its own stat card, its own special rules, and then the talents, which are pretty much generic, but there is so much tactical depth in there that you would be trying to learn and memorize it and keep in your head if you're playing with the full game. The nice thing as well is you can actually swap in some of the different expansions, so you don't always have to be playing the same thing at the same time.
Brilliant.
I think one of the key things to bear in mind as well is that, as far as I remember anyway from watching the Let's Plays that we did, is that it's very much a just pick the things that you think are cool and they'll probably work.
Everything, there's nothing on the board that is just like hobbled by something else. But there are some things where you can get like nice little synergies and things on the go.
Cool.
Like, for example, I am most definitely at any opportunity going to put Ratatotska into any of my games, because who wouldn't want to play as a little tiny squirrel that runs up and down the world tree gnawing at its root? Who wouldn't want to do that?
Won me over.
Yeah, exactly. Jerry's sold on the squirrel.
Jerry just went squirrel.
Now, on top of that, you have some of the core mechanics of the game actually negate someone just being like constantly hammering you with the units. So you have the activation system. So each unit you pick up will give you a certain number of activation cards and Art of War cards. So your activation cards, obviously, they're what you're going to use to activate your units. You can only activate a unit once per round. However, you can activate up to 2 units in a round, but you have to pay an Art of War card for it. I like doing that sometimes, but there are a couple of uses for the Art of War cards as well. Because you're working off a hand, and you only get to draw one a turn unless you pass where you draw another one, you can use the Art of War cards to either draw 2 cards out of the deck at random from the top, or you can use them to go hunting for a specific activation that you need to pull off a tactic.
Cool.
Again, it's that risk reward, that resource management then, because as soon as, say, Thor has 4 activation cards, as soon as I've done those 4 activations, I have to wait till I've burnt through my entire deck before I can use him again.
Right. Yeah. So it's all about learning the best times to use specific characters and monsters and that kind of thing.
It's you're prioritizing your activations to get the most use and the most effect out of your units. And sometimes you will just have to be top decking it, going, I'm dying for an Art of War card.
Another thing I was going to ask as well is that, so like we've talked about it as being like a 1v1 experience, but it is 2 to 4 player.
It goes to 4 players, and
So
that's nutty.
Is that just chaos free for all, or is it team based, or is it?
It is team based, and you can do free for all as well. The important thing is all right. Say you're just doing a skirmish. So there's skirmish and there's scenarios to play, right? If you're playing skirmish and it's 1v1, you get 18 points to build your force. If you're playing 3-player, you get less. If you're playing 4-player, you get less.
Right.
So it really tightens things up to make sure that the game doesn't like bloat out and there's too much on the table. It keeps itself balanced in that way. And then on top of that, you have sort of a greed versus need mechanic in the dice rolling. So the dice only count up to 5 with a blank face. You're doing 2 rolls in your combat roll. So your first roll, you're trying to get 5s. If you say roll a 4, anything that's rolled anything else except for a blank, you can use as a +1 to make it up to the 5. You can build beyond the 5 to actually make it up to the defense value of your target.
Right.
So you can either build up to it and guarantee your wound, or you can build up to the 5 and risk it on the next roll.
Oh, I like that as well. That's cool.
It's a really, really clever mechanic where, you know, it's risk it for a biscuit kind of thing. Do I build like 3 5s needing to roll, but the thing does have a blank on it, so I could just whiff it on all 3.
So whoever's playing Thor is going to be risking it for a biscuit all the time, because that's exactly what Thor would do.
Well, I mean, like, the abilities they've built into each of the characters really sort of suit them and feel right for them. So, of course, Thor, he's got Mjolnir, he can do big thunder strikes, he can heal himself up. And then into the talents, he can basically grab a tree and just throw it at Loki's head if he wants to.
As you do.
I saw that on their Kickstarter that they had the miniatures, the monsters, they were Titan size. How much bigger is that than the regular one?
Oh, they're huge.
Yeah.
So basically, regular miniature is about 35 mil scale, right?
Mm-hmm.
You saw the gods last week, they're about twice the size.
Yeah.
The Titans are about the same again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they are pretty big and beefy miniatures, some of them.
So if you're going to be throwing Jormungandr into a game, it's going to dominate kind of thing.
Well, not really, because even that balances out, because it's counted as a huge miniature.
Right.
And so the board is basically not laid out in grids or anything. It's all like randomly shaped
It's like
spaces.
segments, isn't it?
Yeah. But because he's a huge miniature, he will go into a board space. He will fill up the entire board space, and anyone who's standing outside of that board space can then attack into him.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's
Wow.
neat. Yeah. But no, so like as Justin was saying, one of the things they have been doing is they've just been busting through stretch goals. So they've got a lot of stuff in there that's sort of from beyond the realms of just like the initial North Pantheon. So you've got Tyr and all that kind of stuff. Yep. You've got Mimir, you've got the Norns, you've got Radatotska, as I was saying. Can't go wrong with a Norse squirrel.
Nope.
And then you've also got things like, so they've included, so Grendel and Grendel's mother are in there as well. So if you want to use Beowulf in your games, then they've gone back to the Geats and introduced them into the mix. Because why wouldn't Beowulf be called back to fight at the end of Ragnarok, I guess?
It looks like they've also gone into the Germanic saga as well.
Yeah.
Because I've seen people from the Ring cycle there.
Yeah. But
it's
loads of stuff.
Honestly, it's fantastic. And this game system, if you liked Pantheon, you can actually get it in this one as well.
You can. Yeah.
But who wouldn't take the Norse Pantheon over the Greek?
I gotta say, I am a fan of Thor and all the Norse gods compared to the Greeks. Although I do have a soft spot for good old Zeus, even though he's an asshole. I do like him.
Everything in the Greek mythology could be fixed if he just stayed at home.
Yeah. Just Zeus, stay at home, please.
Just sit on your couch, just watch everything happening. It's fine.
There wouldn't be any Greek mythology if it wasn't
true.
For his shenanigans.
It's basically what did Zeus go wrong, and why are the other gods trying to stop it from going badly again? Yeah.
They've already announced their next Pantheon as well, which has me excited. They're going to be doing the Egyptians.
Ooh,
wow.
So I'm expecting to see like warriors of Set, mummies, all the classic gods. I'm hoping to see some of the actual Egyptian pharaohs, just done as the heroes. So I want to see Nefertiti on the table.
Oh,
that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Well, if you're interested in getting involved with the Germanic and Scandinavian gods, you've got 10 days left, and it looks like they're probably going to hit 1 million.
They've already hit $1 million, which is what they're counting for the
Yeah,
goals.
I'm not counting that. counting proper money, mate.
But yes, so as well as Mythic Battles Ragnarok, which is Justin's little baby.
I love it. I want it to be, yeah.
We have also been looking at another fantasy Kickstarter recently, which is from Blacklist Games. And this is sort of like a dual campaign in a way, because not only is it funding the Fantasy Series 2 set of miniatures, but also Lasting Tales, which Jerry was able to talk to Mark Latham about a couple of weeks ago.
I was indeed, yeah. So this is it's an unusual one. The first time we came across Blacklist, they were just doing miniatures.
Yeah.
And then they had that horror-based, I suppose, miniature / card game that they produced last year. I want to say everything was last year, but then I keep remembering that last year didn't really happen, and it turns out it was 2019.
Yeah,
so it was definitely last year. For
things are a blur.
So don't worry.
It kind of a leap year where we lapped the year.
Yeah. So they've returned back to the fantasy series for Fantasy Series 2, but this time it has been comboed with essentially a game book for Lasting Tales, which is cooperative fantasy narrative storytelling on the tabletop. So sort of semi-RPG skirmish. Now, it's fascinating for a couple of reasons. One is the miniature side. The miniatures they produced for the first fantasy set were very well received. One piece, or if they're not one piece, then they are pre-built when you receive them, at the very least. And it was a great way of getting a lot of miniatures for tabletop fantasy gaming or RPGs, because you had these heroes, but then on top of that, they'd also added in groups or mobs of monsters, so you could get, half a dozen kobolds or orcs or whatever it happened to be. With Fantasy Series 2, they're doing the same again, so we're getting more heroes, and then they're varying the heroes. So if you picked up the first one and you've got a female dwarf paladin, then this one it might be a male dwarf paladin, or vice versa, or half orcs, or whatever it happens to be. So we've got a lot more of these character models, which are really nice sculpts. And again, another big Galvi bucket filled with various things to kill up on the tabletop. So here we see kobolds, dragon-faced, not dog-faced. I'm not going to say they're wrong, but kobolds come in two flavors, and I prefer mine to be dog-faced. But it doesn't matter; they die all the same, regardless.
They're in the way of the goals. That's the
So you get these groups of archers and wraiths and wormlings, so all the sort of stuff you'll need as they go throughout the campaign, adding more and more stuff for your gameplay. Then at the same time, we have Lasting Tales, and Lasting Tales is a figure agnostic game. So you don't have to have the miniatures, and you don't have to buy the miniatures from Blacklist for that game. It's completely standalone. However, everything that they're producing, either from the first fantasy series or this current Kickstarter, are in the book. So if you want to get into sort of tabletop skirmishing, with a one-stop shop, essentially, you can pick up miniatures and game here and know that everything that is there will be included in some fashion. And it's a cracking wee game. I've had a look at the demo rules, which is
free to download on here as well. So
and it gives you one scenario, and it's about a 40-page long book, and it's very interesting because it is a 1 to 4 player cooperative game. There is nobody to be playing against. At no point can the GM pick on you and repeatedly kill you up. Instead, what you do is you play a scenario, and the scenarios will be themed to a certain extent. So the first one is a haunted village. You arrive at a village in the afternoon after a long day, murder hoboing away out in the forest somewhere, and there's nobody there. It's deserted, and so you have to sort of investigate, and as you investigate, then things happen in the town, and this is all procedurally generated. And there's some really interesting things that Mark's done with the game. For example, when you kill stuff, it goes into essentially a dead pile, but they then migrate into the graveyard, so you have a 1-turn buffer and then after that turn, you roll, or you'll be told when they can come out of the graveyard and be respawned. So you've always got one turn's grace. And then if your rolling is particularly bad, they might not come back for a while. But D6 are very swingy dice, as we know. And eventually you'll just start rolling, and everybody who's been stockpiled in that graveyard will suddenly come swamping onto the board. And it has a lot of things that will be familiar to Warhammer players or RPG players. You've got very similar stats like willpower and the like. You've also got fate points that can be spent to re-roll dice. But then some scenarios also will burn your fate points. So that first scenario in the demo rules explains that when the sun goes down after turn, I can't remember, I think it's turn 7, the sun sets, and from that point on, while the undead are coming at you, you will lose a fate point every turn. And if you've spent the entire game wasting them on rerolls that you failed, you'll find that your hero will die very quickly because they've got no fate to burn, and they will just go down. So that's just one example of how they're working.
I know. I nearly did it a minute ago, Ben, when I saw the bears. I was like, bears.
Bears are great, especially for stampedes. And also the big things now. We haven't seen renders or anything in the Kickstarter. It's just been the concept art. But having already fulfilled a fantasy Kickstarter and then a couple of other
with massive dragons and all sorts of
things, we already know that they are more than capable of producing the quality. Even if it is some sort of terrible pug-like thing. You're looking okay now, son, but 4 generations' time, they'll be wheezing heavily and staring at 2 opposite balls.
Harsh.
It's not harsh. My brother has a pug. They're terrible wheezing things. But yeah, it's fascinating to see just how far they go, because they're currently 500,000 thereabouts and have unlocked a mixture.
So much stuff has been unlocked. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I do like how they're doing it, where they go, hero, some things, some monsters, hero.
Like one of the things I saw when the initial Kickstarter came out, and then this one, is that even if you're not going to play Lasting Tales, which seems like a fantastic game in of its own, actually, like this is like the perfect place to come and pick up basically anything you'd ever need to be a dungeon master.
Oh yeah,
because there's every monster that probably exists in the monster manual by this point, which is just wild.
They're also doing, and these are the things they're doing a mixture of unlocks via social media as well. And these, whereas the unlocks for cash money are mostly about miniatures, the social stuff is helping add additional parts to the game.
That's right.
Now, Mark was saying he's written the whole thing. Whole thing's done and dusted. It's a big, beautiful book, working mostly on D6s. Really interesting little rule set. And then I believe, I don't know if it's Scott or Adam at Blacklist, is doing all the scenarios and the like, which are done for the main book. And then anything extra is being done by him as well. So Mark was quite happy for people to go absolutely nuts on this Kickstarter and explode it, because his work here is done. I'll just fall back to the guys at Blacklist to write more.
The thing that I really liked about the premise of Lasting Tales, and it's something that we've seen happen over the last 2 years, is there's been very much this focus on DM-less solo style adventures on the table. So obviously we had Raiders of Shadow Deep, which is a great one. Elder Scrolls Call to Arms, which is again by Mark actually, has the solo rules in it for you to play the games. But I really like the idea of taking Lasting Tales and doing it in a cooperative style. And I love that that's the way that the game's been built effectively. Because with Raiders of Shadow Deep, I see that very much more of like a solo experience in essence. Whereas with this, because it's got that D&D theme, that choose your own adventure theme going on, I feel like it could be a really nice halfway house between playing a miniatures game and playing your role-playing games, and actually building up interesting tabletops. And because of those additional scenarios that have been designed for this and come in the book and all that kind of thing, I find it a really attractive prospect for someone who, like me, ends up doing most of the DMing most of the time.
Sure.
Whereas instead I can step away from it. Exactly. Yeah. Instead, I can be like, it doesn't matter. The game's the DM. We can all piss on him.
And they were saying the scenery packs, I think.
Brilliant.
If there's a scenery piece made, certainly for some of the bigger ones like the fountain and the like. There's a scenario that ties into it.
Brilliant.
Although you can just, obviously, if you're not picking these up, you can just substitute it with whatever, for the scenario in question. So I'm really keen to see where else they go with this, because the system is very solid. Mark does some. I've been a fan and buyer of Mark systems for decades now. Literally.
Did Walking Dead as well.
Did Walking Dead as well.
Oh, yeah.
Did a lot of the Warhammer historic stuff.
Did.
So
he's a Games Workshop veteran. So.
Yeah. So the system itself is a very robust system, but also leaves itself open for massive expansion down the line, or even slight changes. So you can see in this that you can pick up some of the previous stuff they've done for the fantasy version, Fantasy 1, but they're also, the horror game is also available with those miniatures, and it wouldn't take much to do an expansion or a reskin of this down the line to do a gothic horror on the tabletop, where your group is Van Helsing and his friends as they attempt
Ravenloft kind of thing.
to clear out dens of vampires or whatever it happens to be. So it's one of those things. I really appreciate solid rule sets that are robust and also lend themselves to being tailored and expanded upon. And for their first sort of main, I would say, tabletop fantasy game, it's a terrific
rather
set
than it being
already.
a board game kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's nice to see where they've gone with it. And I will be very excited to see what else they manage to get as they expand here, because the sky's the limit at the moment, and I know they've planned this out fairly religiously. So I haven't seen a dinosaur in the stretch goals yet. Some sort of giant because they've got pretty much everything else there.
I was kind of digging the female halfling barbarian, the artwork.
Yeah,
female halfling barbarian's nice. There's a half orc paladin somewhere swinging a massive mace, and the artwork for her looks particularly nice.
I loved that the ranger that they did was basically Dritz, but it's actually an orc in. And then the stretch goal after that was Panther, and I was like, I get that. Yeah.
I really liked the Manticore. There was a Manticore somewhere that was nice. Yeah,
and a dwarf bard who is just bongoing away on a drum, lurking at his front. So, Blacklist Games Lasting Tales. It's a beefy one, folks. And if you're just after, currently $75 will get you almost 200 miniatures. I mean, that's hard to beat.
Can't say better than that.
Barring just going into people's houses and just taking my collection. But there's so almost 500,000 and 11 days left on Lasting Tales.
Yeah, definitely a good halfway house. I think that one definitely want to check out.
Yeah, I would definitely suggest grabbing the demo copy of the rules and having a look, because it is super simple. Yeah, and we'll give you.
Many of us have got lots and lots of miniatures in our collections that we could use for it. So
and you can have a couple of games and see if it floats your boat, and if so, you can always grab the book. Then I imagine this one's going to be around for some years to come.
Yeah,
it's not going to be a flash in the pan. So superb. 2 excellent Kickstarters, young man. I approve.
Well, Justin was so excited we had to show it off.
We couldn't not.
I think that about wraps us up for this week.
It does.
We are going to be back on Sunday for our XLBS,
the Cult of Game Show.
The Cult of Game Show, where we wax idiotic about what we've been up to and what the community's been up to hobby-wise. If you want to join us, they can jump on over to OnTableTop.com and get a 30-day trial to the Cult of Games. Even join us on our Discord to see what nonsense is being talked in there. And if you want a chance to win that fantastic Star Wars Legion starter box for the Ridge Tridge, like the cool kids, don't forget to comment below, like the video, and give us a bit of a share around. Share us. If you want to know if you're a previous winner, if you go over to OnTabletop.com and check out the prize claim center, you'll see whether or not you were lucky enough in the past to grab one of our other prizes. So until Sunday, ta-ta.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.